Good evening, and welcome to One Alive, the reading series of the Writers Association of Northern Appalachia. I'm your host, Damian Dressick, and this is your other host.
Christina Fastonic, and I'm having lighting issues. It's that time where the lighting is weird now at 8 o'clock. It used to be full on sun glare all summer, and now, it's is it raining? Is it snowing? Is a hurricane a blowing? That kind of thing. Anyways, how are you?
Okay.
And how are you,
Well,
Damien?
here I am very excited. We had our August break from One Alive, the summer break. We're super jazzed to be back with you all for the fall lineup. We've got Darius Stewart tonight, so I'm very excited. I've heard wonderful things. He's got a new book out, I'm really pleased. I'm looking forward to hearing this. A terrific reading.
Sounds awesome. You want to tell our listeners and viewers who he is?
I would love to. Darius Stewart is the author of the poetry collection Intimacies in Borrowed Light. From Eastover Press, it just came out this year. He holds an MFA in nonfiction from the University of Iowa and an MFA in poetry from the Michener Center for Writers. He is currently a Lula Merle Johnson Doctoral Fellow in English at the University of Iowa. He lives in Iowa City, which is in Central Time, with his dog, Fry.
I love that you have a dog named Fry. That's awesome. How'd that come about? What's that about?
He's named after the Futurama character Philip J. Fry. He's
I
actually
expected that.
yeah. He was rescued by a friend of mine who then asked me on a drunken night back in 2013 if I wouldn't mind adopting him myself because he was moving in with a girlfriend who had cats, and Fry liked to wrangle cats for
Wrangle.
yeah. So I got him, and when I sobered up the next day, I realized what I'd done and the responsibility that I'd taken on, and I decided why not. Um,
See, I thought
why
maybe you meant that Fry had a drunken night, that he was the one who was intoxicated.
not? He may have. He was very personable, so he could have been.
Well, that's not what you really came here to talk about, though. You came to talk about your work. You want to tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll let you give a reading.
Yeah, sure. So, Intimacies in Borrowed Light is a bringing together of three of my previous chapbooks, The Terribly Beautiful and Social Voce, which were both editor selection choices in the Main Street Rag portrait chapbook
Oh,
series.
cool.
And then the third book, The Ghost Tonight Becomes, won the 2013 Gertrude Press chapbook competition. It was published in 2014. So the poems that aged well, along with some newer poems that hadn't been published in the volume, make up, or they do make up Intimacies in Borrowed Light. And it wouldn't have come into the world if not for my good friend Jesse Graves, Jesse Graves, who's a professor at East Tennessee State University. He got in touch with Denton Loving at Eastover
Nice.
Press, and based on Jesse's good word, they agreed to sign me to a contract to put this out, and it's done wonderfully in terms of its response locally here in Iowa. And I see on Amazon they're down to 3 copies before they have to order more. So I'm happy to hear that.
That is
All
great.
right. Very cool.
Okay,
All
so
right, we're going to
like,
disappear.
All right, thank you all for joining us, and we had a little hiccup with the time, so I told a lot of you that I would be on about an hour from now. So um, you'll have to probably catch me in the archive. I guess since we're talking about my dog, I will read one about a dog. It's actually about a dog that I had when I was in Austin, Texas. He was my roommate's dog, Emma. If I can, okay, here we go. All right. This is called Self Portrait with Dog. In a bed of green grass, the dog dozes, as if rowing the sky overcast, her legs paddle air. And where there is sunlight filtering in, she is radiant. Her coat of fur newly washed as soft as cotton swabs I use to cleanse her ears, the corners of her eyes where sleep has congealed into a stubborn mucus. Watching her is like air threatening a menacing storm, as now she growls in her sleep, her feet still a fretwork of activity, as if escaping a mob vengeful against her sharp bite, as if she is from a lineage of dogs snarling on the same side of a water hose's blast. But what does she know of those times? Her ears perk at shrapnels of noise. Is it the sound of skin split open, spilled blood in the concrete cracks, lugging on its back what has been wasted to the gutters? My knowledge of history becomes a language translated by her nervous whimpering, and unprovoked her body trembles as I tremble when anyone walks across the future side of my grave. Right, since I didn't have the pleasure or privilege, whatever, of picking the poems I'd like to read because of the confusion with the time, I'll read one more. Um, this is called Statues in the Park. Toward the end of day and wishing again for daylight, what's discernible is evening's impending gloom. If we'd admit it, this is a sad occasion. Us perched at separate ends of a park bench, block-headed statues in the dark looming behind us holding so dearly to one another. This is what makes art, what art makes of us. Models for statues battling stubbornness. We try to one up the other without too much effort, since that would lessen the impact of the plan. Which would be what, exactly? To act sullen in the afterglow of day gone awry is to hold our tongues as best we can. As for these statues, they bear no resemblance to any human frailty. Though their actions speak as much about truth as any whose skulls are shaped to resemble childish drawings of perfect squares. Perhaps this suggests there is kindness in our obstinacy, each of us somehow regarding the gift of winning as if it were the daily courier arriving with news the earth is no longer a viable place to live. An absurdity, yes, though a game two men can play, holding and holding on as if forever to silence, fearing what becomes a man who clings to only what's left standing. I think actually I may have time for one more because I have 6 minutes, right? Um, I'll read Poem to a Son. Finally, I'm trying to forget the impossibility I will ever father a son. Then, remembering I'm trying to forget, I remember the forgetting and I'm heartbroken, lying in bed, twilight slicing horizontal lines into my flesh, as if the arch moon intends to remind me I'm prisoner to a grave fault, as if the stretch of night would give itself over to my grief. I would wrench the crescent, stardust, helixes of galaxies, isotopes, invisible matter, from its smug, overbearing suspension. But how will I feel in the morning when I overhear the old couple next door arguing because the perfume of her gladiolas has become so overwhelming? And he complains of allergies. But later they make up as there's something to be said about the long coupled. They remind me we must find shameless happiness wherever it may be. In wood piles they spend stacking together, preparing for winter, and the screech of a raccoon chasing ghosts of cedars. Even in the old house of my boyhood, where the neighbors have a son. A boy I've seen only in the dim corner of his room, back against the window, tucked playing, gliding hands along the ridges of spine. I watch the child lean into the cupped palm, his father scratching the fine hairs of his head, and I imagine joy welling inside a boy with a face like mine. All right, I think that'll be my time, and I will join the crew for a little bit of chatter.
All right. Christine has some kind of strange internet thing. She is not. If you're like, where is she?
Yeah.
So I'm sure she'll join us back in a sec. That was wonderful stuff. I love some of the image. I like the idea of like, the way the lines, especially in the last poem, the interplay there with one about the sun and then preparing for winter.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something very delicious in going on there throughout the where you're building that theme.
Right.
I like that quite a bit. I was thinking the poem before that, the line about clinging only to what is left standing. And it seems like if I were thinking about a political statement for our times, that
Isn't that the truth?
strikes me. Yeah.
Right.
So I have not had somebody else who had this experience. I think you had it in a different way. I had a chapbook that was supposed to come out, but the idea of trying to then work with a book later. When my second book was actually originally a chapbook, and then I had to add some things, cut some things. And so, could you talk a little bit about like that process of how you sifted out? Like, what are my keepers? What do I think is what do I want to represent me right now in 2022?
Yeah. For me, it's a lot easier. I don't know if that sounds obvious to say this, but it's a lot easier than putting together, a whole book. Because with the chapbooks, for me, it was easier for me to pick out the poems who had this leitmotif, or creating a leitmotif using the various poems. For instance, a poem like Poem to a Son might include, other poems about sons, SON sons, or if I wanted to play with that, SUN sons, right? But there could be some kind of through line that doesn't necessarily have to create a kind of narrative arc necessarily of the book, if that's what you want. When I studied at Bucknell University one summer, they had a program. It's called the Bucknell Seminar for Undergraduate Poets now, but then it was called the Bucknell Seminar for Younger Poets. And we had Terrence Hayes and James Harms as our visiting poets. Remember James?
You could not. I got to jump in here, Darius. You could not. It's hard to do better than Jim Harms and Terrence. I mean, those are some fancy folks.
Right, they are, and give one of the readings because they came at different times during that summer. But James Harms was talking about how I'm not sure if it was a collection, but he had assembled a bunch of poems where a quarter appeared in each poem, and he realized after a while, let's just write poems where quarters appear. I can't believe I remembered that. Maybe that really helps, free some stuff in my mind. But yeah, that essentially that's the way I like to look at compiling a chapbook, like those little things that occur or recur rather, that kind of make up that smaller volume of poetry.
Sometimes you don't even realize that those things are in your work until you look back, or until somebody else says, hey, did you realize that you use the color red in your writing a lot? And you're like, I do.
Right. Yeah, Terrence Hayes actually told me that I put the moon in a lot of my poems a lot, but I'm not sure he said that, if I remember correctly, as a way to, as an observation to just leave out there, or an observation that I might want to reconsider. you know, because the word is quite, you know, the cliche, or it can be. So it's not like a quarter, right?
Yeah. Well, I love the first poem that you read because I feel like, when I talk to students about poetry, I dabble in poetry. I'm not a poet at all. But when I talk to them about it, I said, what poets do is they see the world, they see everything that we see and that the rest of us see, but they're able to put it in language that we wish that we could use. And so when you talk about, your this dog being radiant, and then everybody will read that line or hear you read that, and I think that they think, yes, radiant, that's the word. And I think that that's what poetry does for us. It
Yeah,
gives us nomenclature, a language to describe things that we can't put into words, right?
right,
Like the
right.
rest of us can't put into words. So I really appreciated the shrapnels of noise and the images there that everybody's like, yes, but we couldn't do it without poets, without you.
Yeah, yeah.
So we have a comment. Brittany Means says, "I love you, Darius."
I love you too, Bert. Brittany Means and I attended the nonfiction writing program together. We graduated in 2020. She's one of my diamonds. I was the only male in my cohort. So all the other females or femme presenting or identifying uh, persons were called Darius's diamonds. Yeah. I'm glad Brittany is here, which means that when I was saying that, yes, 8 Pacific time, 7 Central, 5 Pacific, that she's here, regardless of that mistake in the time.
Well, and these do live on, as you said, in the archives, and they live on
Yeah.
our Facebook
Well,
page.
Yeah.
And yes,
Yeah,
in fact,
we'll say more when we're off about how the readings, how the viewing actually happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank
No,
you
cool.
so much.
I want to say, I forgot to ask because you got on so quick. Do you have this? Can you hold up a copy?
Yeah.
Super
So
cool.
this is my reading copy. That's
All right.
these
Oh, that's
Very
tabs
cool.
here.
beautiful.
And actually, if I can, so my good friend Annie Fletcher, who's a wonderful artist, her partner Shelly Obar designed the cover.
Cool.
But Annie, she did a lot of drawings, illustrations that appear. So this is the illustration that appears beside statues in the park.
Hmm.
I
Wow.
love her work. I love how her interpretations of my poems ended up being so surreal for the most part, which I think makes sense because I'm not writing surrealist poetry, but some of the themes, like you were saying, clinging to what's left standing is, maybe a dictum for our times, so to speak, but it is kind of surreal at times,
Right.
what I'm writing about. So yeah.
I love that because I teach ekphrastic writing, and I
Yeah.
think that would be a fantastic example of, how to teach students. Really, ekphrastic writing is about inspiration. What comes to your mind, and
Yeah.
that's like it'd be a great example for somebody wanting to teach ekphrastic poetry.
Yeah, I have one in here about Renee Magritte's The Lovers.
Cool.
Oh, cool.
I wish I would have known that, Christina, or else I would have read that poem as well.
Oh, that would have been cool.
Example. Yeah,
We'll have to have you back.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, perhaps
All right.
next fall, my lyric memoir, "Be Not Afraid of My Body," should be out from Belt Publishing.
Oh, right on. Very cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. We'll have
That's
to set
great.
that up. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Thank you so much, Darius, for making time to do this, especially when it was a time you didn't entirely anticipate making.
Yeah, not at all. Thank you.
I did not think about. We were thinking 2 different time zones.
Yeah, I'm glad I woke up when I did.
We are too.
Yes. All
right.
right. Thanks a lot, everybody, for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you all for the rest of the year.
Yes, absolutely. See everybody. Good night.
All right.